What's up guys, it's Wasabi and I'm back with another review. Today we're gonna take a look at the VAXEE PE-K standard version. I managed to find someone selling it brand new, so lucky me. But as always with the content on my channel, these are my thoughts, personal opinions, and experiences with the product. This is my first VAXEE mousepad, and the reason I got this one is because quite a number of esports pro players have been using it. So I felt that perhaps a few of you gamers out there may be wondering what this pad is like. It is quite a new control-oriented mousepad from VAXEE released in March. For regions that VAXEE ships to, this pad retails for $49.99 USD for the standard version and $54.99 for the PE-K GEH version, which has a grippier base. Those are the MSRPs on the website for US and Canada. For EU, it's much more expensive at €54.99 Euros and €59.99 Euros respectively. And for people in Singapore or those with access to Shopee, I managed to find someone selling this mousepad, though I gotta say at a rather disgusting price. Let's just say it costs more than an XXL Artisan Type 99. But I'm a reviewer with a global audience, not complaining. And this is important to me, but still it was expensive, man. First, the packaging. The mousepad comes rolled up in this box, and surprisingly, even though it was rolled up, I took it out of the box and laid it on my desk. The pad was completely flat, which was nice to see. From my experience, mousepads that come rolled up usually take a couple of days to flatten out. And for this one, there's really no need to wait, even though it's quite a firm mousepad. The design of it, there's a VAXEE label stitched at the top right corner of the pad. The edges have raised stitching, not something you usually see pads having today. The raised edges have a purpose though. They act as an indicator when your mouse reaches the edge of the pad. For me, I don't always notice when my mouse goes over the edge, but I can see this being useful for people who do, because the earlier that you know you're at the edge, the sooner you know it's time to reset your mouse position. And a subtle but interesting detail, the sides are not completely curved like you commonly see on most stitched edge pads today. On this one, it looks like a straight cut, which looks pretty cool. The size of this pad is 510 by 500 millimeters with a thickness of 3.5. It's larger than the typical 490 by 420 size you see in most standard pads today. And for now, this is the only size that is available. The quality of this mousepad is very good. Rubbing my hand across the surface, the material feels very nice to touch, and it doesn't feel overly smooth or velvety or synthetic. It feels like a thick cloth. There is a bit of texture, but not abrasive against my skin, which is very nice. The stitching is uniform and tight, but since I got this one, which is about 2 months ago, there is a bit of fraying along the stitching, but it's not excessive. For the base material, I would best describe it to have a sandpaper-like texture. It's not plush or sticky like Poron, but you feel a lot of friction if you rub your hand against it. I think the great thing about a base like this is that you won't see a collection of dust and dirt stuck onto it. And so far, it's been holding up just fine. There's no peeling, tearing, or noticeable loss in grip since I got it. I come from using the HSR SE Rouge 2, which has been my main pad this year, and that's more of a balanced control-oriented pad with a firm base. The VAXEE PE-K, on the other hand, feels more like a slow control-oriented pad with a firm base as well, and it feels slower overall and offers a greater level of control in the glide and stopping power. In general, the surface of this pad has higher static friction than dynamic friction. It is easy to come to a stop and glides feel controlled. Speed is slow, but to me, it doesn't feel muddy. Moving from one point to another on the pad feels easy to manage, and I can feel a bit of texture under my mouse as well, which definitely helps. This is very much a pad that is most suitable for tactical shooters, but I've also been using it a lot in the finals and Overwatch 2, and it still feels very manageable. Once the glide gets going, the surface doesn't hold you back as much as other control pads that I've tried, so tracking feels very stable when you have to do it. However, because of the high static friction, fine micro adjustments can be a bit challenging since there is a fair amount of bite when starting or stopping movements. Now, one of the interesting things VAXEE did with this pad is making the vertical glide slightly faster than horizontal. And I bet that some people might think, can't you just rotate another pad to get the same effect? Well, technically, yes, you can, but the concern is the degree of the difference between the friction of the X and Y. For example, if I rotate a GSR3 sideways, which I tried, the glide on the X-axis feels way too slow and the Y-axis feels way too fast. So the VAXEE PE-K P-K, however, has a more optimal difference between the X and Y, with the Y-axis just a little bit faster and it is very subtle. Moving my hand up and down the pad, the surface feels soft and smooth. Compared to left and right, there is noticeably more friction. But under the mouse, it's not significant enough that it should put you off or make you go buy it just because of this feature. But it is an interesting idea that I hope they continue to explore. So even though it doesn't feel game-changing, it is still a very nice control-oriented pad to game on, which at the very least, I think is the most important thing. Now here's a quick sound test to give you a better idea of the texture of its surface. There are two versions of this mousepad, the standard PEK and the PEK-GEH, which has a much grippier base. I got the standard version because I figured people wonder how grippy the standard one is, and I gotta say that it's just grippy enough. It's not as grippy as Artisan's pour-on base, but it's got this finish that I best describe, as I said earlier, is similar to sandpaper. Don't worry, it's not actual sand and it doesn't scratch your desk, but there is a decent amount of friction that keeps the pad from sliding around. Also, because this pad is 510 by 500, there's more surface area contacting the desk. And you know, if this pad was any smaller, say 490 by 420, I am quite sure that with this standard base, it will slide around too easily. When it comes to daily comfort, I would say that it's comfortable enough for everyday use, but it also depends on the individual. This has a mid to firm base, which doesn't offer much for comfort, but its firmness does benefit glide consistency. The raised stitching is the one thing that will stand out the most because it feels somewhat rough. So for gamers with delicate or sensitive skin, the itch will likely be quite annoying if you game without a sleeve. It's not a cheese grater or sandpaper kind of rough, but it stands out more than any other pad that I've experienced before. So this is not a pad that I'd recommend if you're looking for the absolute most comfortable experience, especially when it comes to the itch comfort. For me, I'm fine with it, but I can't say it makes the pad any more comfortable than mouse pads with a stitchless edge design, like the GSR Rouge 2 or VAXEE's PA and PB series mouse pads. You know, I would like to see a version of this pad without the raised stitching because my experience with this surface has been excellent, and I think quite many people want to experience this sort of performance with more comfortable stitching for daily comfort. The VAXEE PE-K performed very well. This is a pad that I do not mind using as my main because the quality is pretty good and I enjoy the characteristics of the surface. For gaming, especially in tactical shooters, the stopping power and control feel excellent. It gives me confidence when making big flicks. Mouse movement feels very predictable and the level of control is not excessive, which is why in a game like the finals, it's been feeling good too. And for me, recoil control on this surface feels very manageable, which is actually one of the first things that stood out when I got this pad. But for very fine micro adjustments, that's where it starts to feel restrictive for me. If you are interested in this pad but you are concerned that it will be too slow for you, like with every other pad, you can make use of aftermarket skates to adjust how much speed and control you like in the glide. Now, final thoughts and what do I think of its value? First, the quality of this mousepad is very good because honestly, if you didn't tell me the price, I would have guessed it was much more expensive than it is. But not the ridiculous price that I paid for though, I'm talking about the original MSRP, which is a fair enough price. Like most products, this one appeals to specific preferences. This one is for someone who wants good stopping power and a smooth control glide from one point to another. And the difference in the vertical and horizontal glide, with vertical being a bit faster, is really not noticeable enough to be the main selling point of this pad. But overall, I really do enjoy gaming on this one. If you game on a very low mouse sensitivity and mostly aim with your arm, I'd recommend going for the PEK-GEH version. It's $5 more, but I think it's worth getting the grippiest base and saving yourself the trouble. You know, I'm very envious of countries that can purchase VAXEE products directly from their online store. I hope that in the near future, gamers worldwide will have a chance to experience what VAXEE has to offer because they make some pretty interesting stuff. I like that they always seem to be trying something new with each release, and the quality of their products, at least for the more recent ones that I've tried, I am very pleased. VAXEE sent me an MP01S V2, an XE V2, and a VAXEE PD back in June. So those are some reviews that I've been working on, and mouse pads just take the longest longest time to review, man. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, please leave a like and subscribe to support my channel. And I guess I'll see you in the next one.